जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जनरंजन। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जनरंजन। यमुना तीरावनचारी। यमुना तीरावनचारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जनरंजन। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जनरंजन। यमुना तीरावनचारी। यमुना तीरावनचारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तरशत श्री श्रीमद अभय चरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तरशत श्री श्रीमद भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती ठाकुर गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नाम आचार्य श्रील हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपी गो श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। Shri Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Navadvip Mayapur Dham ki jai, Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai, Ganga Mai ki jai, Yamuna Mai ki jai, Tulsi Devi ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. You're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 16, text number 6. Yatha vastuni panyani himadini tata paryatanti nareshu evam jivo yonishu kartrishu yatha vastuni panyani himadini tatastataha paryatanti nareshvevam jivo yonishu kartrishu yatha vastuni panyani himadini tatastataha paryatanti nareshvevam jivo yonishu kartrishu yatha vastuni panyani himadini tatastataha paryatanti nareshvevam jivo yonishu kartrishu.
Yatavastuni panyani hemadini tatastataha
Paryatanti nareshvevam
jivo yonishu kartrishu yatavastuni panyani hemadini tatastataha paryatanti nareshvevam jivo yonishu kartrishu yatavastuni panyani hemadini tatastataha paryatanti nareshvevam jivo yonishu kartrishu. Vasika.
Yatavastuni panyani
hemadini tatastataha
paryatanti nareshvevam jivo yonishu kartrishu.
Ladies.
Yatavastuni panyani hemadini tatastataha paryatanti nareshvevam jivo yonishu kartrishu.
Anybody on Zoom?
Yatavastuni panyani hemadini tatastataha paryatani nareshvevam jivo yonishu kartrishu.
Okay. Yatha, just as. Vastuni, commodities. Panyani, meant for trading. Hema adini, such as gold. Tata, from here to there. Paryatanti, move about. Nareshu, among men. Evam, in this way. Jivaha, the living entity. Yonishu, in different species of life. Kartarshu, in different material fathers. Translation and commentary, translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Just as gold and other commodities are gradually transferred from one place to are continually transferred from one place to another in due course of purchase and sale, so the living entity, as a result of his fruitive activities, wanders throughout the entire universe, being injected into various bodies in different species of life by one kind of father or after another. Purport. It has already been explained that Citraketu's son was his enemy in a past life, and had now appeared as his son just to give him more severe pain. Indeed, the untimely death of the son caused severe lamentation for the father. One may put forward the argument, if the king's son was his enemy, how could the king have so much affection for him? In answer, the example is given that when somebody's wealth falls into the hands of his enemy, the money becomes the enemy's friend. Then the enemy can use it for his own purposes. Indeed, he can even use it to harm its previous owner. Therefore, the money belongs neither to the one party nor to the other. The money is always money, but in different situations it can be used as an enemy or a friend. As explained in Bhagavad Gita, it is not by any father or mother that the living entity is given his birth. The living entity is a completely separate identity from the so-called father and mother. By the laws of nature, the living entity is forced to enter the semen of a father and be injected into the womb of the mother. He is not in control of selecting what kind of father he will accept. Prakrite kriyamanani. The laws of nature force him to go to different fathers and mothers. Just like a consumer commodity that is purchased and sold. The laws of nature force him to go to different fathers and mothers, just like a consumer commodity that is purchased and sold. Therefore, the so-called relationship of father and son is an arrangement of prakriti, or nature. It has no meaning, and therefore it is called illusion. The same living entity sometimes takes shelter of an animal father and mother, and sometimes a human father and mother. Sometimes he accepts a father and mother among the birds, and sometimes he accepts a demigod father and mother. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore says, Brahmanda Brahmite kon bhagyavan jeev Guru Krishna prasade pai bhakti lata bij. Harassed life after life by the laws of nature, the living entity wanders throughout the universe in different planets and different species of life. Somehow or other, if he is fortunate enough, he comes in touch with a devotee who reforms his entire life. Then the living entity goes back home, back to Godhead. Therefore, it is said, Janame shabe pita mata pai Krishna guru nahi mile bhaja hariye. In the transmigration of the soul through different bodies, everyone, in every form of life, be it a human, animal, tree, or demigod, gets a father and mother. This is not very difficult. The difficulty is to obtain a bona fide spiritual master and Krishna. Therefore, the duty of a human being is to capture the opportunity to come in touch with Krishna's representative, the bona fide spiritual master. Under the guidance of the spiritual master, the spiritual father, one can return back home, back to Godhead. Really awesome purport by Srila Prabhupada. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Shreshtam Manamapi Shachiputramatra Svarupam Rupam Tasyagrajam Urupurim Maturim Goshtavatim Radha Kundam Girivaramaho Radhika Madhavasham Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpade Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostude Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we are now continuing our narration of the pastime of Maharaj Citraketu, well, first wanting a son, and getting a son, and losing his son, and then being instructed by Narada Muni and Angira Rishi about transcendental knowledge. And so Citraketu Maharaj has just been initiated. He received a mantra he received it. Well, actually, first, the son was brought back to life. Narada Muni brought the dead son back to life. And then eventually, Citraketu Maharaj will come face to face with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there's a really amazing theme in the Bhagavatam that pretty much pervades the entire thing. And by pretty much, I mean it actually literally pervades the entire thing, every single canto, practically speaking. The whole premise of the Bhagavatam is basically following these different families of kings, these different dynasties of kings, and their activities for the purpose of teaching Krishna consciousness. There's actually a verse that I haven't memorized. In the 12th canto, 3rd chapter, which explains this. Shukadeva Goswami is speaking to Maharaj Parikshit in the course of narrating the Bhumi Gita. So yes, he says here, such kings as Prithu, Pururava, Gadhi, Nahusha, Bharata, Kartavirya, Arjuna, Mandhata, Sagara, Rama, Kardvanga, Dhunduha, Raghu, Trinabindu, Yayati, Sharyati, Shantanu, Gaya, Bhagiratha, Kuvalayashva, Kukutstha, Naishatha, Nriga, Hiranyakashipu, Vritra, Ravana, who made the whole world lament, Namuchi, Shambhara, Bhoma, Hiranyaksha, and Taraka, as well as many other demons and kings who possessed great powers of control over others, were all full of knowledge, heroic, all-conquering, and unconquerable. Nevertheless, O Almighty Lord, although they lived their lives intensely trying to possess me, these kings were subject to the passage of time, which reduced them all to mere historical accounts. None of them could permanently establish their rule. And then the next verse, which is the more significant verse. Kathayimaste katitamahiyasam vitaya lokeshu yashav pare yasham vijnana vairagya vivakshaya vibho vacho vabhutirnatu paramarthyam. Shukadeva Goswami said, O mighty Parikshit, I have related to you the narrations of all these great kings who spread their fame throughout the world and then departed. My real purpose was to teach transcendental knowledge and renunciation. Stories of kings lend power and opulence to these narrations, but do not in themselves constitute the ultimate aspect of knowledge. So one might question why, in order to teach renunciation, why would one speak about kings? Why would one speak about people who are basically have access to the absolute pinnacle of sense gratification? They're in one of the most enviable positions in the material world. People are always looking for power. I think one person even said, it's like maybe some politician or some rich person, but they said something like, if you've ever heard that money doesn't buy happiness. Oh, I forget what it was. No, it was something like, people think that money is the real. No, like something like people think that money buys happiness, but the real thing is power. That's what. Oh, was it? Yeah, I forgot the exact quote. Yeah, I mean, but I remember some.
All I know is that she said, if you think that money and all the other things are aphrodisiac, the most powerful aphrodisiac is power.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that's what you're quoting.
Yeah, I think that's probably it. It just came in my mind now, so that's why I quoted it. But I should probably, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, power is something that people are after. Something that people really, really want. So in order to teach renunciation, why speak about kings? Why speak about people in that position? Well, Shukadeva Goswami is saying that although they're in that position as kings, although they're in one of the most enviable positions in the material world, to teach renunciation by using those examples of great kings who've renounced everything, it shows that even the pinnacle of sense gratification, even the most amazing, opulent position, and these aren't just like kings like we know. These aren't just kings like, whatever, you have the king of Transylvania. Yeah, King Charles or something like that. Or we're talking about the rulers of the entire world. We're talking about unimaginable opulence, unimaginable wealth, unimaginable beauty, everything is just absolutely inconceivable. So Shukadeva Goswami is making the point that even these people at one point decided, what am I doing here? It got to the point, there's so many pastimes in the Bhagavatam, this is one of them definitely, where you have this very kind of drawn out and confusing and just like exhausting and bewildering series of events. And then at one point, the main, you could say, character, of course these are actual histories, they're not just stories, but you could say the main character at one point just says, what am I doing here? Just what the hell is going on here? And then renounces everything. So this pastime is one of them. I was also thinking of the pastime of Maharaj Yayati in the, is that the eighth canto of the Bhagavatam? So in the 8th canto of the Bhagavatam, there's this narration of Maharaj Yayati and his becoming married to Devayani, who's the daughter of Shukracharya. So it goes something like, Devayani had a friend named Sharmishtha, who was the daughter of Vrishaparva. These are heavenly personalities. And Devayani, like I said, was the daughter of Shukracharya. 9th canon, okay. And so one day, they were good friends, so one day they were walking together and they decided to go bathe in a lake or river. And so they went and they bathed. They had all their friends with them. They went and they bathed. And then at one point, Shiva passed by with Parvati. And so because they were, they were undressed, they, out of respect for Lord Shiva, they came out of the water and they quickly, grabbed their clothes and covered themselves. So by mistake, Sharmishta accidentally grabbed Devayani's dress. Now Devayani being a Brahmana, or a Brahmani, and Sharmishta being a Kshatriya, Devayani was quite offended. She was, she had a little pride. And so she said, just see, this person, this impudent person has stolen my dress, just like I think she said, just like a dog steals ghee, meant for sacrifice. Look at this, you're stealing from the brahmanas. And then Sharmishta goes, what brahmana? He says, all I see is a beggar. Is all you people you guys just, because she's a kshatriya, so you guys just come and beg at our door, And so then Sharmishta, in her anger, somehow or other that really angered her, she grabbed the dress from Devayani, leaving her naked, and then threw her in a well. And so then Devayani's in this well, she's crying, she's very, upset, of course, as you would be if somebody threw you in a well. And so then King Yayati, Maharaja Yayati, he's on a hunting excursion. Kshatriyas can do that. So he comes upon this well to drink some water, and he sees Devayani there. And he gives her, his upper cloth and says, what's going on here? And, he pulls her out, and then she says, oh, now you've touched my hand, you've saved me, and now you have to be my husband. By taking my hand, you've accepted me as your wife. And so he was attracted to her, even though she was a brahmana. Brahmanas and kshatriyas generally don't marry. But he said, okay, fine, whatever. And she had also received a curse. She cursed somebody who then in turn counter-cursed her to not marry a brahmana. So she was destined to marry a kshatriya by this curse, or at least a non-brahmana. So then Devayani goes to her father, Shukracharya, and cries and says, oh, this Sharmishta, she threw me in a well, and narrated the whole thing. It's all her fault. And then so then Shukracharya then goes to Vrishaparva, who actually was his disciple. Vrishaparva was Sharmishta's father, and says, come on, what is this? Can you control your daughter, please, a little bit? And so he says, I'm very sorry. And then so he says, okay, fine, whatever. Just whatever my daughter desires, just fulfill that desire. And so Devayani says, okay, whatever I desire. Okay, so she says, whenever I get married, I want Sharmishta to come with me and all of her friends also to be my maidservants. And then so Sharmishta says, okay, fine. And then so eventually she was married to Maharaja Yati. And when that happened, Shukracharya warned him. He warned Maharaja Yati. He said, okay, Sharmishta's going to come with her, but whatever you do, don't, fool around with her. Don't just stay away, it's just going to be. And so he said, okay, fine, And so eventually Maharaja Yati begot a child, or I think it was a son specifically, with Devayani. And Sharmishta became a little jealous. So then Sharmishta approached, dressed very attractively, she approached Maharaja Yati and said, so, I see that you've had a son with Devayani, my friend. So, she approached him and said, oh, you can't deny me, I'm a, so, they united. At which point, Devayani, when she found this out, she became extremely upset, very angry. And then Shukracharya then came again, and Maharaja Yati was cursed to become old and invalid. Even though he was a young man, he was at the height of his life, And then he was cursed to become an old man. And he said, oh God, I'm so sorry, what can I do? How can I get rid of this? And then so it was arranged that, okay, if somebody will agree to take your old age, then they can take it and you can have their youth. So then he approached his different sons. They all said, no way. I'm at the height of my life. How can I don't want to become old. And one of his sons said, okay, I'll take, your old age. So he did. So then his sense gratification really took off. Then he had 2 wives, he had children, and he was being served by them. And it was described that he enjoyed for 1,000 years like this, just amazingly. Actually, it's funny, Prabhupada in one verse he translates, he says that Devayani was giving him the highest transcendental bliss. which you can imagine, if it's compared to transcendental bliss, it must be pretty intense, sense gratification. So, but then one day, yeah, he just wasn't satisfied. After all of that whole thing, and he finally got to where he can enjoy, he screwed over his son, this whole thing. And after 1,000 years of enjoying, it just wasn't working. He wasn't feeling it. So the point is made in the Bhagavatam again and again that the attempts to enjoy this world, any attempt to try to enjoy this world, see it as a place of enjoyment, it just produces such severe confusion and suffering. It's like all of you have seen that carnival game. You have the cups, and there's a ball under one of the cups, and then they're moving around. So it's just like that. There's happiness somewhere. You feel like it. It's like you always hear about it, that there's happiness, but you're just trying to follow, you just, and it's just so confusing and bewildering, because any attempt to enjoy this world, it produces abhiman. Abhiman means a conception of oneself, a sense of oneself. So Citraketu Maharaj, according to the way he was trying to enjoy this world, he got a son, and now he says, okay, I'm a father. We're set. Now I'm a father, and I'm a king too, and I'm going to have a dynasty. I'm going to be the leader of this big dynasty. This was his conception of self. And then all of a sudden, just like that, his son passed away. His son left his body. And this sense of self that he had developed as a result of that was gone. He was no longer a father. He was no longer a leader of a future great dynasty. He had nothing. Like even they say, like if somebody is grieving or something like that, he lost himself. So that's quite literally what Citraketu Maharaj is feeling right now. Was feeling before. He lost himself. He lost his sense of his identity as a father, his identity as a future, as a leader of a great dynasty. It was gone, and so it's very bewildering. It's like your whole conception of who you are is just gone like that in a moment. And that's why we see many people. For example, somebody's thinking, "Oh, I'm a husband," and then their wife leaves them, and then it's just so bewildering to them. It's just so shocking that they end up killing themselves. So many times it's happened. So the stories in the Bhagavatam, the histories which are narrated in the Bhagavatam are meant to show just how absurd the whole thing is. All this, just confusing, exhausting arrangements to try to just enjoy a little bit, to try to just arrange some little thing, and then eventually it's just like, Jesus, like how much longer am I going to go on with this, Like Maharaj Priyavrata. Maharaj Priyavrata, he was a brahmachari, a Naishnika brahmachari, I think it was mentioned. He was doing austerities at Mandara Mountain, and Lord Brahma approached him, who I think was his grandfather, and he said, hey, there's nobody to rule the world, can you come? And so he said, okay, all right. And so he came, and he was, he was just a king. And then all of a sudden he was flying in a chariot all over the world. He was carving the oceans. He was doing all these amazing things, but he started out, he was just a brahmachari engaging in austerities. And so at one point, I think it was after like 1 billion years or something like that of ruling, at one point it's described, it just came to mind like, wait a minute, what am I doing? And he just went back to Mandara Mountain and continued his austerities. So there's a song by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Durlabha Manava Janma, this rare human birth. It could also be translated actually as a difficult human birth. But in that song, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Kisher Shamshar e Chaya Baji Prai, Ihate Mamta Kori Bhrita Deen Jai. He says, what kind of world is this anyway? What kind of place is this? It's like a light show that I saw at a carnival. Just all kinds of shapes and lights flashing before my eyes, but you can't really make sense of it. It doesn't really add up. It's just kind of like strange. And he says, it's full of illusion, but still I'm so attracted to it. Of course, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is not actually attracted to it. But, and he says, but despite this, Brita Deen Jai, all my days are just passing fruitlessly, uselessly. So that although there's so much, it seems like there's so much going on in this world, what's the actual results? What's actually happening? Nothing much. What's it all for? You get so involved, like Maharaj Citraketu or all these different kings, or Maharaj Priyavrata. Of course, Maharaj Priyavrata did so many amazing things. He carved out the oceans. He did, you know, it's described, he performed many amazing activities. But ultimately speaking, what's the use? People say all the time, oh, you owe it to your, you know, your family, or you owe it to your society, or you owe it to your country, or you owe it to the world or humanity or whatever. But do you? Do you actually? I mean, like is being pointed out in this purport or in this pastime in general, the people around you, the people in your family, the people, you know, who seem like they're close to you, may well be your enemy. May well be here to literally, Maharaj Citraketu's son was literally in his life just to make him suffer. So, one who's sober sees the reality, this reality, that actually this material world doesn't add up to very much. It's all based on sense gratification. All these relationships, practically speaking, are just based on like this I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine mentality. Another example is like the Avanti Brahmana. Of course, the Avanti Brahmana, he's described in the 11th canto as he wasn't the best person. He was quite miserly, and he wasn't exactly properly taking care of his family. But for that, the consequence of that is that everybody, just the whole world practically turned on him. His family turned on him, and so then he said, okay, you know, he felt very remorseful, and so he took sannyas then, and then it's described that people would just like, he was going to take prasad or something like that, and people would pass urine in his prasadam, or they'd, you know, it's even described that people would like bind him with chains and lock him up in their home for some time and beat him, just like horrible. So, at any moment, practically speaking, just according to whims, people can turn, you know, the whole situation can just turn completely. That's material nature. We have no real control over it. We have no real connection to it in general, just like Prabhupada's mentioning in this purport. The living entity is a completely separate identity from the so-called father and mother, and that can be extended to any relationship, not just father and mother. The living entity is independent from this whole material world, but it appears that there's a connection. Due to our mind, like what's that verse? Manashashtan indriyani prakritistani karshati. That the living entity is struggling in this material world primarily with the mind. By some mental concoction. We've, like some verses ago, it was mentioning that like this whole world is it's all mental concoctions. Our position in this world, our connection to this world, it's all just a product of the mind. Manasijam. Therefore, one verse in the Avanti Brahmana speaks, he says, Kim dhana der va kim, kama va kama der uta, mrityuna grasyamanasya, karma bir vota janmadai. He says, what is wealth? What are the people who give wealth? What is sense gratification? What are the people who give sense gratification? For somebody who is in the grips of death. What does it all mean? What do all these people mean? What are these things, wealth and sense gratification? What do the people who provide it actually mean for one who's in the grips of death? And the implication is that it doesn't mean anything. And then he says, karma birvota janmadai. He says, what's the use of continuing on performing all these activities that just give one another birth in this material world? Nunam pramatta kurute vikarma yad indriya pritaya apranoti dasadu manya yata atmanoyam asanapi kleshada asadeha. That for a person who's sober, for a person who's intelligent, they don't engage in all this vikarma. They don't engage in all these useless activities that just bind one more and more to the material world. It's described in the Bhagavatam with very strong cords, meaning you can't cut them by yourself. You can't get out of the entanglement of fruitive action by yourself. So what does it all mean? Nothing, practically speaking. For a materialist who's engaged only in activities to increase their sense gratification, to increase their happiness, and to mitigate their material suffering, what does it all mean? It means practically nothing. It has no actual real basis in reality. Because we're all in the grips of death. Everybody is in the grips of death. Not just the Avanti Brahmana, not just Maharaj Citraketu's son, not just Parikshit Maharaj. Everybody is in the grips of death. Prabhupada makes the point that, okay, Parikshit Maharaj knew he had 7 days. That's more than we know. We don't know if we have 7 minutes or 7 seconds. We have no idea. Therefore, this verse, Labdva sudurlabhamidam bahusam bhavante manushyam arthadam anityam api hadiraha turnam yateta napated anumriti yavad nishrayasai vishya kalusarvatasyat. Now, this human form of life is extremely difficult to obtain. Only after wandering through 8.4 million different species of animal life can one obtain this human form of life. Rupa Goswami actually, or in the teachings to Rupa Goswami in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's elaborated, this is elaborated upon by describing how rare it is for one to come to devotional service. That, okay, even you come to the human form of life, fine, but people in the human form of life have so many different conceptions. People in the human form of life have, like even Prabhupada's mentioning in this purport, in the transmigration of the soul through different bodies, everyone in every form of life, be it human, animal, tree, or demigod, gets a father and mother. This is not very difficult. The difficulty is to obtain a bona fide spiritual master and Krishna. So, okay, fine, you get to the human form of life. That's difficult in and of itself. What to speak of getting to the human form of life and obtaining a bona fide spiritual master and obtaining Krishna? So this verse that I just quoted is saying, while you're not dead, you should strive for the real thing. Don't just waste your time just going after these goals that are just useless, that are just fleeting. Because like Prabhupada's saying, the real difficulty, the real thing is to obtain a bona fide spiritual master in Krishna. Because by associating and serving a bona fide spiritual master, serving his instructions, like this, what is it in the Bhagavad Gita? Tadvidhi pranipadena pariprashnena sevya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaham. That one should one should inquire submissively from a spiritual master and render service to him. And by doing this, all the abhimans that we develop, these conceptions of self that we develop, like thinking, oh, I'm this or I'm that or I'm a, whatever, we can gradually, over time, get rid of those and develop a real abhiman. Jivar Shubhav Krishna Dasa abhiman. That the svabhav or the nature of the jiva is that he has the abhiman of being Krishna Das, of being the servant of Krishna. So, and then the point is made in quoting this verse that a Krishna Das abhiman doesn't just mean that it's distinct from that verse, Jivera Shorupoy Krishna Nityadas. That's saying that's our swarup, that's our real form, our real nature is to serve Krishna. But Krishna Das Abhiman implies that it's not just to serve Krishna incidentally, or to serve Krishna haphazardly or accidentally, like a Gyata Sukriti or something like that. But to identify as a servant of Krishna, to consciously serve Krishna, intentionally serve Krishna. And this is described by Srila Rupa Goswami as mamata rati. To feel, it's a symptom of bhav that Rupa Goswami delineates in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. To feel a kind of possessiveness, that Krishna's mine and I'm Krishna's. You could say it's like a similar idea that's presented in this verse, Shraddha Shabde Bishwash Kohe Sruddhada Nishchoy Krishna Bhakti Koilo Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. That faith, Shraddha, means that one has a unwavering conception or unwavering determination that just by engaging in the process of Krishna consciousness, everything else is accomplished. There's nothing else to accomplish. So when one has that faith, one feels that, okay, I'm Krishna's. Krishna's taken possession of me, and then in a submissive kind of sense, that Krishna's mine. The process of Krishna consciousness, that's where I am. That's Krishna's mine, so to speak. And I'm not going to let go. Of course, Rupa Goswami is describing this as a symptom of bhav, so it's not so easy. Of course, faith is a difficult thing to solidify. But this is what we can aspire for, to have this kind of faith that Krishna's mine, that the process of Krishna consciousness is mine, and that I don't need to go anywhere else. I don't need to do this. I don't need to do that. And this isn't even in like some kind of grand philosophical sense that, I don't have to, perform tarpana for my forefathers because I've taken to the process of Krishna consciousness. Even things that we want, like for instance, sense gratification. Conditioned souls want sense gratification. Well, the process of Krishna consciousness is a good way to get sense gratification, or I guess a better word would be happiness. Everybody wants to be happy. So if you want to be happy, then take to Krishna consciousness. You don't have to look anywhere else for happiness. It's not that you have to, I practice Krishna consciousness and then I do other stuff, to keep me happy. Of course, that's there to an extent in the stage of sadhana. But what we should strive for, what's the goal of the practice of Krishna consciousness, is to feel that there's nothing else for me to do. There's nothing more for me to acquire. There's nothing more for me to strive for other than that which nourishes my Krishna consciousness, which nourishes my remembrance of Krishna, which nourishes my chanting of the holy name and my rendering of practical service to the mission of Lord Chaitanya and to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I'll stop there, and there can be some. Yes, Maharaj.
Well, you were talking about Maharaj Priyavrata and how he created the oceans and did so many great services to humankind. And then you say, but he realized it was all useless. Well, what if everybody took up that view, that it's all useless? I notice you're sitting on using a microphone. Somebody had to make it. I'm sure you're going to have breakfast. Somebody had to grow those tomatoes and fruits. So, you go to the dentist. I mean, you're just a parasite living off everybody else's hard work with no appreciation.
Yeah.
And looking down your nose at them. But you take advantage of the benefits that they give to you. You use them so you can serve Krishna, and yet you're condescending towards them?
Yeah, Prabhupada once was asked by, I think, a reporter. He said, what would happen if everybody in the world became like you, became a Swami, or became a devotee? Prabhupada said they won't.
I was there. He said, there'll always be fools like you who won't.
Yeah, so I didn't touch on this so much because the purport was wasn't so much talking about it, but in the Vedic conception also has that idea that, okay, not everybody is going to just become a renunciate and renounce everything like the Avanti Brahmana and just wander and whatever, but there will always be people who do these things, who produce things like microphones, or produce things like grow fruits and vegetables and things like that. So there will always be people who do that. Therefore, they should do it for Krishna, and that's another type of renunciation, yukta vairagya, the renunciation of using everything only for Krishna service, like in the prasadam prayer, Shrira Vidyajalja and the Arthahikal Jiva Fela Vishaya Sagre Taramandi Jivoiti Lobhamoy Sudurmati Takajay Takatina Samsari Krishna Boradoyamai Gori Bara Jiva Joy Sva Prasad Anadila Bai. That Krishna, for instance, not everybody has a controlled tongue. Therefore, Krishna says, okay, you can offer me food. He's very merciful. That's what Bhaktivinoda Thakur was saying. He said, you're very merciful. Therefore, you allow us to offer everything we eat so that we can control the tongue. So Vedic culture, it regulates lower propensities, which means propensities for sense gratification or propensities for fruitive action. It regulates those, and then in regulating them, it channels them into higher propensities. So, for example, if one's attached to, for example, agriculture, which is a relatively wholesome thing to be attached to, then Krishna says, okay, fine, engage in agriculture, but offer everything to me. You can do that, and then you can offer everything to me. Or, I mean, this goes for so many other things. So is that an okay answer? Okay. Also, another thing Prabhupada said, he said the devotees are just like, well, I think there's a purport. I think Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, where Prabhupada's quoting Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he says that the materialists, they're engaging in so much activity, they're producing so many things just for the convenience of the devotees. So Prabhupada compared the devotees to snakes. He said, you build a big building and we walk in. So.
How are they compared to snakes?
Oh, because for example, like a gopher or something, he builds a hole, and then the snake goes and he eats the gopher and just lives in the hole. So.
Prabhupada said that he was walking in a park in Denver, and he said that they work hard all week long, and because they work so hard, then they pay taxes and they build a park. Because they work so hard, they're all asleep, and they can't benefit from the park. Who's in the park? The devotees. We're going for a morning walk, half an hour out the yatra,
I was saying that the snake thing's a verse in Bhagavatam.
Is it really?
And then also in that same area, then there's that I think the example is like a bee, how a bee is collecting so much honey, more than the bee will ever actually use, and it's the beekeeper that comes and takes advantage of it.
Yeah.
And so it's a little different, that one, but saying that actually the householders should work and collect, and then the renunciants should then come to each hive, each home, and then take some. Of course, then there's explanation as to what that renunciant is supposed to do with it, but still.
Yeah.
What I was thinking was that the person making the microphone, the person growing the fruits, and I mean, they're selling them, they're doing so many different things, and they're not all thinking. The beauty of the Vedic, one of the beauties of the Vedic Varnashram system is that there's a sense of leaning forward. They're all thinking, I want to come to the point of pure devotion. I'm not ready yet. Like St. Augustine, give me celibacy, Lord, just not yet. So they know that that's where they want to be. So there's a sense of service. Well, let me serve the saintly people who are doing. I can't do that, but let me serve the saintly people. So that's a thread, and let me. Not that everyone is thinking pure devotional service, but they know the goal, and they're happy to have the opportunity. Like if you go to a pious Indian family, go to a Sindhi house. They're not renowned for their renunciation, but they love to give to the Vaishnavas. They like to help build temples. They like to serve because they're thinking, I can't do it, but they're doing it. So that's kind of a theme in the Vedic culture. Whatever your position, you're thinking, well, let me offer some service to those who are doing it. And the result is, in fact, the higher you go up in the Vedic system, the more renounced you are. So it's not that the Brahmin, this is one of the things that spoiled it. You've got the Brahmins thinking, yes, I'm a Brahmin and everyone should serve me. And you're all servile and I'm the great Brahmin. But a genuine Brahmin is thinking, I'm lower than the straw in the street, let me serve back. There's a sense of, yes, let me serve by setting a good example, by teaching. Mm-hmm. It's that sense of leaning forward and service.
Yeah.
That makes it work.
Thank you, Maharaj. Anything more? Perhaps on Zoom.
Yes, Amogha Prabhu, if I may, there are two questions on Zoom, and the first question is to be presented by Krishna Prabhu. Krishna Prabhu, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, I was wondering, oftentimes when preaching events happen, like Krishna Lounge or Sunday Feast, the first thing that's presented to people is that they're the soul, not the body. Mm-hmm. And although this is philosophically correct, are we not in one sense cheating the people? Because these people, they come, they believe abortion is okay, they think the woman is equal to the man, they think it's okay to change their gender. And when they come and we tell them that they're the soul, not the body, they go home leaving thinking that it's okay to believe all these things because at the end I'm not this body. And so about boiling the milk, one moon, many stars. Are we in one sense cheapening the process by trying to be inclusive in this way? By these people aren't even qualified to practice varnashram, which is the beginning and beginning process to come to the realization that you're not the body. And also, if you could touch on the larger issue here, which is the virus, the pandemic, and what I mean by that is the mind virus. It's this liberal progressive.
Stop him.
Liberal.
Okay.
Just take
This
one question
liberal
at a time.
progressive mind virus.
Maybe
Hey, we're going to take one question
at
at a time. You know, just take the first one.
So the first one, okay, so the first one about, telling people that they're not the body, that they're the soul. Well, the reason that that's done is because that's the way Prabhupada preached. That's the way Prabhupada generally preached to new people. Of course, he spoke other things, not just that. But that was generally the thing that Prabhupada emphasized as a starting point. And then people become interested in the philosophy. And then we explain more to them, hopefully, than that. So I wouldn't go so far as to say that we're cheating people. I mean, if we give them only that, and there's not a vision of cultivating people beyond that we'll just tell everybody that they're the soul and not the body, and we don't tell them anything about Krishna, or we don't tell them anything about Vedic culture or anything like that, then that's a kind of cheating by not giving people the full truth. But as a starting point, I don't see that as such a problem, because that's the way Prabhupada started with everybody.
Not just Prabhupada, it's how Krishna preaches in Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, and Maharaj is making the point that that's also how Krishna starts in Bhagavad Gita. So that's a starting point. You can't really give everything to everybody in one small class, but you give people just enough that they start to question, and then they become more inquisitive. So, I mean, you could say, okay, you're not the body. I mean, that's enough for people to process, you could say, for one sitting. If you say to somebody, okay, you're not the body, you're the soul, and also, you know, whatever, if you want to say, you know, women are less intelligent than men, and also, you know, this whole thing, which it's fine. It's an aspect of, you know, it's in Prabhupada's books, it's an aspect of Vedic culture, you know, the roles of men and women. But as a first kind of like introduction, I don't know, I don't personally see it as a good selling point for people in modern culture, which, like you said, is a mind virus. You could say like a liberal mind virus. So, yeah, to me, it doesn't seem like such a issue to start with that. And then, of course, with the vision of introducing different things to people as they... but most people aren't even willing to hear that. Most people aren't even willing to hear that you're not the body. That's not such a basic concept in people's mind. Most people think that that's insane. So, yeah. Is that somewhat satisfying?
Thank you.
Okay, Vijay Krishna Prabhu?
Yes. Do we have time for my question? If not, no problem.
If it's brief.
Yes. It's about the duty of a human being is to capture the opportunity to come in touch with Krishna's representative, the bona fide spiritual master. And this quote is reminding me of like capturing a chicken. If you are a meat eater and you want to eat a chicken, you need to take the trouble for capturing the chicken, and it's not easy.
Yes.
So in a similar way, to capture a spiritual master, it seems, in accordance with this quote, that it is not easy. So based on this, my question is, why not easy? Because after all, Krishna loves us. He wants to be with his parts and parcels. Why does he make it so difficult for his parts and parcels to come in contact with him? Because in accordance with this quote, to capture a spiritual master in order to get Krishna, it is very difficult.
Yeah, so the problem is, Krishna loves us, that's true. But the problem is that we don't love Krishna. So it's not difficult to obtain a spiritual master or to obtain Krishna. In general, it's difficult because we don't love Krishna. So Krishna is willing and ready to give us a bona fide spiritual master, to give us, and practically we see that he's trying, actually. The devotees go out and, you know, on book distribution and other things. And people are put into that situation, you know, where they're walking by a book distributor or something like that. But they don't avail themselves of the opportunity. So Bhakti is supremely independent. Like Ashram Maharaj said, she go where she, what did he say? She goes where she very well pleases, or something like that. I think he said that. So, yeah, Prabhupada said you could become Krishna conscious in a moment. Krishna will send a spiritual master when you're ready. And once you have the association of a spiritual master, it's up to you what you do with it. Krishna's not going to force anyone to do anything. So is that okay?
They asked Prabhupada, why didn't you come earlier? Prabhupada said, you weren't ready.
Yeah. Is that okay?
Yes,
Vijay?
Prabhu, that is better than okay, as to be expected. Wonderful answer to my question. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Patita Pavana Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
I'm just going to read this while people are walking out because it's a nice little section. So yeah, with this Avadut, when he's describing the 24 gurus and the snake comes up, the verse is, when a person living in a temporary material body tries to construct a happy home, the result is fruitless and miserable. The snake, however, enters a home that has been built by others and prospers happily. And then the purport's really nice. Purport: the snake does not have the proclivity to build his own home, but rather lives in a suitable place constructed by other creatures. Thus, he does not entangle himself in the labor of home building. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur points out that although materialistic persons take unlimited pains to invent and mass-produce electricity, automobiles, airplanes, etc., ultimately these things are meant for the convenience of the Vaishnavas who are preaching Krishna consciousness. The karmis will always go to such trouble, but the devotees will always offer such laborious productions to the Supreme by engaging them in his loving service. The devotees, being concerned with the ultimate perfection of life, do not personally struggle for material advancement. On the other hand, there is no need for the devotees to artificially imitate the austere lifestyle of ancient times. And he goes on, but anyway.
They asked Prabhupada one time, you say all this renunciation, you're not involved in material affairs, why are you flying in an airplane? Prabhupada said, actually, only the devotee should fly in an airplane. He said, you should all you're doing is causing trouble in one place and going to another place to cause trouble. So they should make the airplane just so the devotees can travel.
Jai.